Have you ever met someone who didn't just enter your life but entered your soul? Someone who felt like home and heartbreak at the same time, as if the universe carved a moment in eternity just to bring you together, not to stay, but to shatter you awake. They didn't just love you, they activated something. They stirred memories, lifetimes, emotions that had no name. And even after they left, you were never the same again. You smiled differently. You carried a quiet storm. Because what they left behind was not emptiness, it was awakening. This is not a love story. This is a soul story. It's not about happily ever after. It's about the moment that changed you forever. It's about the one you couldn't keep, and why the universe needed you to meet them. Not for comfort, but for growth. Not for safety, but for transformation. Some people don't come to love you gently. They come to break the illusions you built around your heart, to show you the you forgot you were. So now, let's get started. Take a breath, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's your reflection, it's your release, and maybe, just maybe, it's the closure your soul has been silently begging for. Let's begin this journey, not to find answers, but to find yourself, all over again. Chapter 1. The cruel gift of a deep connection. Have you ever met someone whose presence felt like a divine interruption in your life? They didn't arrive gently. They arrived like lightning, sudden, electric, undeniable, as if the universe reached deep into your soul, pulled out your forgotten pieces, and placed them in someone else's eyes. But here's the harsh truth. Not everyone who touches your soul is meant to stay in your life. Sometimes they're meant to wake you up, because before them you were asleep, walking through life with a mask, a smile that hid confusion, a routine that numbed your deeper calling. You thought you knew who you were, but then they came, so nothing made sense anymore. They stirred your silence, triggered old wounds, resurrected dreams you buried just to survive. They cracked open parts of your heart that even you were afraid to face. And the most painful part? You felt seen, truly seen, maybe for the first time. But it didn't last, because it wasn't supposed to. This was never about love. It was about awakening. This was never about forever. It was about remembrance of who you are beneath the noise. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate." That person, they were not fate. They were your mirror, your soul's messenger. A cosmic alarm clock ringing through the chaos of your comfort zone. They didn't come to complete you. They came to crack you open, to force you to look at your shadow, your patterns, your wounds, your truth. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to realize someone could make you feel that much only to disappear like mist in morning light. But listen carefully. This was not a loss. It was an assignment. It was the universe putting you back in alignment. You didn't meet them by accident. You met them because your soul was ready. Ready to remember, ready to heal, ready to evolve. So no, this wasn't a mistake. It was a brutal blessing, a cruel gift, wrapped in a connection that felt like home but was designed to push you out into the unknown. Because only in discomfort do we grow. Only in heartbreak do we meet our depth. And you, my friend, are about to rise. Chapter 2. Soul Chemistry. Why it feels so real. Why does it hit so deep? Why does it feel like they touched not just your heart, but something older, something ancient, something sacred? The truth is, when two souls collide with that kind of pull, it's never just about romance. It's never about flowers, dates, and promises. It's spiritual surgery, a divine disruption, a cosmic collision engineered not for comfort, but for evolution. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Let that sink in. When this person entered your life, something reacted. Something ancient inside you moved. Not just your emotions, but your inner wiring. Your spiritual DNA started to shift, and you began to unravel. This wasn't love at first sight. It was recognition at first soul glance, as if you didn't meet them. You remembered them, the way they spoke, the way their presence lingered even after they were gone. It wasn't logical. It was chemical. It was energetic. It was alchemical, because this wasn't about building a safe life together. It was about awakening the parts of yourself that had gone numb, the parts buried under trauma, silence, routine, survival. They didn't come to hold your hand through calm waters. They came to throw you into the storm so that you could remember you were born with wings. And that storm, that fire, was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to burn down the version of you that was living someone else's story. You see, this is alchemy. This is soul chemistry, not the sweet kind. The sacred, unsettling, soul-stretching kind. The kind that forces you to let go of illusions. The illusions of control, the masks, the false narratives, the shoulds that society planted in you. They came to break the mirror you were using so you could finally see your reflection in their eyes. And that's why it felt so real. Not because it was meant to last, but because it was meant to change you. You were never supposed to stay the same after meeting them. You were supposed to shed, to question, to evolve, to feel things so deeply that you'd never again accept a shallow life. So if you're still wondering why you can't forget them, why their memory lives in your body like a ghost that won't leave, it's because they were more than a person. They were a portal to your higher self, to your deepest wounds, to the you were always meant to become. And that kind of connection, it doesn't fade easily, because it didn't come to stay, it came to transform. Chapter 3, Synchronicity or Punishment. Why would the universe show me something so beautiful, only to take it away? Have you ever screamed that question into the silence of your own heartbreak? Have you ever looked up at the sky with tears in your eyes and whispered, "What was the point of this? Why make me feel something so real, just to rip it away?" You're not alone. That question lives in the deepest corners of every soul that's ever loved deeply and lost loudly. But here's the truth no one tells you. It wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It wasn't a betrayal by the universe. It was an invitation from your soul. Because that connection you experienced, it wasn't designed to bring you comfort. It was designed to bring you clarity. It was meant to break the illusion that you were awake when you were still fast asleep. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, not coincidence, not randomness, but a meaningful alignment of events, or in this case, souls. When Jung talked about synchronicity, he wasn't talking about luck. He was talking about divine timing, about moments that pierce through the noise of life and remind you, you are being guided, even through the chaos. That person didn't randomly appear in your life. They were placed there, like a key to a locked door you didn't even know existed inside you. A collision of timelines, a cosmic mirror, a divine echo that said, it's time to wake up. But wake up to what? To the patterns that have ruled your life, to the stories you've been living that were never truly yours, to the wounds you've been hiding behind achievement, behind routine, behind pretending to be okay. They weren't here to complete you. They were here to confront you, to stir your unconscious, to shatter the mask, to pull your shadow into the light where it could no longer hide. You see, synchronicity is not soft. It's precise. It's surgical. It knows exactly what you need, even when it hurts. And sometimes what you need most is someone to walk into your world and remind you of everything you've forgotten. Who you are, what you crave, what you fear, what you've been suppressing just to survive. They didn't just touch your heart. They exposed your soul, and yes, the universe took them away, not to punish you, but to protect the purpose of the meeting. Because if they stayed, you'd focus on them. But if they leave, you're forced to focus on you. This isn't about blame, this is about becoming. That connection was never the destination. It was the activation, the spark that ignited your awakening, the pain that finally made you pay attention. So next time you ask, why did I meet someone I couldn't keep? Remember, the universe doesn't send people to fulfill your fantasy. It sends them to fulfill your growth. This wasn't a punishment. It was a divine whisper, a synchronicity with one message. The old you must die, so the real you can be born. Chapter 4. The Mirror Effect. Why they broke you. Open. You thought they were the one. The final chapter, the reward at the end of your long wait. The one who would stay, love you, fix everything that hurt inside. But they weren't your destination. They were your mirror. And mirrors don't comfort you, they confront you. They don't tell you what you want to hear. They show you what you've been refusing to see. They came into your life, not to heal you, but to reveal you, to hold up a reflection so clear, so raw, so unfiltered, that suddenly all your unconscious patterns were visible. Your need to be chosen, your fear of being abandoned, your unhealed childhood wounds dressed in adult relationships, your tendency to shrink, to please, to overextend, just to be loved. They didn't break you. They showed you where you were already breaking, where you'd been bleeding quietly for years. They simply pulled the curtain back on your pain, and that's why it hurt so deeply. Because for the first time, you were awake. You thought, if it ended, it must mean I failed. If they left, it must mean I'm not enough. I'm not. But what if the ending was the beginning? What if the heartbreak was the doorway you never would have walked through on your own? Carl Jung taught us that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to rule our lives, and we'll just call it fate. But here's the thing. Pain brings awareness, and awareness brings power. And sometimes the only way the universe can wake you up is by sending someone to press on your wounds so hard. You have to look at them. You weren't broken because it ended. You were reborn because it did. That person, they were never yours to keep. They were your soul's alarm clock, a divine catalyst wrapped in human skin, a sacred disturbance designed to pull your healing to the surface. And yes, it was messy. Yes, it was painful. But healing always begins in chaos. Because before transformation, there is the tearing. Before peace, there is the earthquake. Before the light, there is the mirror. And that mirror shows you every shadow, every scar, every lie you've believed about yourself. They didn't come to break your heart. They came to break your pattern, to stop the cycle, to interrupt the script you've been unknowingly acting out for years. The pain wasn't punishment, it was the portal to a deeper truth, to a freer you, to the version of yourself that doesn't settle, doesn't chase, doesn't beg to be seen, because they've finally seen themselves. So when you ask, why did they hurt me so deeply? Understand this. They didn't hurt you. They exposed the part of you that was already hurting. And in that exposure, you found your first real chance to heal. This wasn't the end of your story. It was the mirror that showed you where your real story begins. Chapter 5. Love that was never meant to stay. We live in a world obsessed with permanence, a world that tells us if love is real, it lasts. If they leave, it wasn't meant to be. If it ended, it was a mistake. But what if we've misunderstood the purpose of love altogether? We've been taught to romanticize love, to see it as a fairy tale, a prize, a destination where all wounds magically vanish. But that's not love. That's the ego's fantasy. Because the truth, some of the most real, most intense, most soul-shifting connections aren't meant to stay. They're meant to burn, to ignite something inside you, even if it sets your entire world on fire. Some people come into your life like a flame in a dark room. They illuminate everything, your hopes, your fears, your shadow, your soul. And then, just as quickly, they disappear into the night. Not because they didn't care, but because their role was never to stay. It was to awaken. You see, not every connection is about building something. Some are about destroying illusions. They come to scorch the lies you've been living, to burn through the masks you've worn for survival, to tear down the false identities you've built just to feel loved. This is soul work, not storytelling. This is spiritual fire, not romantic fairy tale. Carl Jung believed that the soul doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your growth. And sometimes, growth comes dressed as heartbreak. You didn't lose a love. You lost a version of yourself. The version that begged to be chosen. The version that thought love had to look a certain way to be real. The version that was still living in fear, in fantasy, in smallness. When they left, yes, it hurt. It cracked something open inside you. But what if that crack was the doorway? The doorway to a deeper truth, to a quieter strength, to a version of yourself that doesn't just chase love, but embodies it. The ones that burn us the deepest, often free us the most. And you're not broken because it ended. You're braver because it did. You looked love in the face, raw, real, wild, and you let it change you. That is not weakness, that is spiritual strength. So stop saying you lost love. You didn't lose, you transcended. You graduated from illusions. You leveled up from needing love to becoming love. And trust this, the universe never removes something that's meant to be part of your destiny, only something that was part of your awakening. So honor the burn, let the ashes fall, because who you are now is someone reborn in truth, and that is a love story the ego could never understand. Chapter 6. They woke you up. Now what? You can't stop thinking about them, can you? Even after all this time. Even when you know they're not coming back. Even when life has forced you to move forward. Their memory still clings to your soul like perfume in the dark. Faint, haunting, permanent. And you've asked yourself 100 times, why? Why can't I just let this go? Why does their absence feel louder than their presence ever did? But here's the truth. Most people will never dare to say out loud, you can't forget them, because they didn't just enter your life. They entered your becoming. They didn't just break your heart. They awakened your soul. They cracked open a portal to the version of you that was waiting beneath years of self-betrayal, people-pleasing, and living life on autopilot. They touched the unfinished symphony inside you, the raw, unpolished, hidden self that was screaming to rise, but was buried under wounds you pretended didn't exist. They pulled you toward a future you were too afraid to approach alone, a future that required strength, self-honesty, courage to walk alone, and the wisdom to stop begging others to walk with you. Yes, they woke you up. But now what? Now, the real journey begins. Because here's the raw truth. They were never meant to walk with you. They were never your destination. They were the earthquake that split your path wide open, so you could finally see the road you were always meant to walk. They didn't come to complete you. They came to collapse everything that was never really you. So instead of chasing closure from them, instead of sitting in the echo of why did they leave me, instead of looking for meaning in their silence, shift the question. Ask yourself the only question that truly matters now. What did they awaken in me? Because that question changes everything. That question isn't about the past. It's about your rebirth. Maybe they awakened the version of you that no longer wants to settle for half love. Maybe they reminded you of your soul's craving for purpose, passion, presence. Maybe they showed you your capacity to feel, to break, to bleed, and still rise like a warrior out of the fire. When someone wakes you up, your soul doesn't give you the option to go back to sleep. You've seen too much now. You've felt too much now. You can't unknow your depth. You can't unsee your truth. And you sure as hell can't unlive the fire they lit inside of you. So, what now? Now, you become the version of yourself that you saw reflected in their eyes. Now as you walk the path that your soul has always known was yours, even when your mind was too afraid to admit it, you stop asking for closure. You become the closure. You stop trying to go back to who you were. You bury that version with love, with gratitude, and with grace. Because the greatest gift they gave you wasn't their love, it was their exit. And in that absence, you found your becoming. Let their departure be your awakening. Let their silence be your turning point. Let their memory be the reason you finally stop living small. They woke you up. Now you lead yourself home. No one else can do that for you. Not even the one who broke you open. Chapter 7. From survival to soul activation. You spent so long surviving, waking up every day wearing strength like a costume, smiling when you were exhausted, holding yourself together while quietly falling apart. You had mastered the art of functioning, but not the art of feeling. And then they came. They weren't just another person. They were a mirror, a frequency your soul hadn't touched in lifetimes. Their presence was disruptive, not because they were loud, but because they were true, and for the first time someone saw you. Not the version you curated, not the persona you presented to the world, but the raw, unfiltered essence of who you really are beneath the armor. They saw the flicker in your eyes when you talked about your dreams. They noticed the crack in your voice when you mentioned your past. They caught the hesitation in your smile, that silent scream that said, "I'm strong, but God, I'm tired." And in that moment, your survival mode started to shake. the numbness that once protected you. It began to crack open. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." That's the loneliness you've carried for years, not the absence of people, but the absence of understanding, of being met at your depth, of being felt, not just heard. They didn't heal you, but they disrupted your false peace. They poked the silent ache you had hidden beneath your routines. They shattered your illusion of "I'm fine," and whispered something your soul hadn't heard in a long time. "Here, feel this. Feel the weight you've been carrying. Feel the grief you buried under responsibility. Feel the rage, the longing, the unmet hunger for a life that reflects your soul's truth." They didn't teach you something new. They reminded you of what you already knew, but had silenced for the sake of safety. Because survival is silent, it's numb. It doesn't take risks. It doesn't ask questions. It just repeats, maintains, endures. But soul activation, that's wild, it's chaotic, it's emotional, honest, rebellious. It breaks the rules you created to protect yourself and forces you to ask, what would life look like if I actually lived it for me? They woke that question inside you. They stirred the part of you that was tired of the script, tired of the masks, tired of the lie that said, "This is all there is." And in that disruption, you were given a sacred choice. Stay asleep in the comfort of survival, or wake up in the uncertainty of becoming. You didn't meet them by mistake. Your soul called for this shake-up, this activation, this deep inner unraveling, because when the soul is ready to rise, the universe doesn't send ease, it sends earthquakes. And this person was your earthquake, not to destroy you, but to remind you that you were built for more than just enduring. You were made to expand, to feel, to break cycles, to remember who you were before the world told you to shrink. So when they cracked your numbness and said, "Here, feel this," it wasn't to hurt you, it was to awaken you, to pull you out of autopilot, to guide you home. And now that you've felt, now that you've been activated, you can never go back. This is your turning point. Your soul is no longer asking, it's demanding. And the question now is no longer, "Why did they shake me?" but rather, "Who am I becoming because they did?" Chapter 8. The initiation. Why it had to hurt. This wasn't just heartbreak. This wasn't just someone leaving. This wasn't another sad chapter in your story. This was initiation, a spiritual threshold, a cosmic doorway, the sacred tearing apart of everything you thought you were, so your true self could finally be born. You see, real transformation isn't polite. It doesn't knock. It rips through you when you least expect it. It shows up as a soul-level rupture, the kind of pain that doesn't just sit in your chest. It shakes the foundation of your identity. Because to truly awaken, to truly meet yourself beyond ego, beyond illusion, something inside you must die. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the sacred path of separating from the false self, from the conditioned patterns, from the mask you built just to survive in this world. It is not a gentle journey. It is a soul surgery. And pain is the scalpel. This heartbreak, it wasn't here to break you. It was here to initiate you. It had to hurt, because nothing shallow can reach that deep. No surface-level experience could have ever awakened the buried grief, the abandoned dreams, the repressed rage, the silenced voice inside of you. You needed something powerful enough to shake your sleep. And this pain, it did just that. It didn't come to destroy your life. It came to destroy your limits, to burn down the lies you told yourself. I'm not enough. I have to earn love. I must stay small to stay safe. And when it burned, it felt like everything was falling apart. But in reality, it was everything false that was falling away. This is what initiation feels like. Confusing, violent, sacred. It looks like loss, but it's actually the shedding of all that was never truly yours. That person? They were your trigger, your guide, your unintentional healer. They activated this portal not because they were perfect, but because they were the perfect mirror for what your soul was ready to face. And as the pain came, wave after wave, you were being carved, cleansed, cleared, not for punishment, but for rebirth. This wasn't about them, it was about you. Your ego called it betrayal. but your soul called it ascension. Because pain is how the universe whispers, you've outgrown this version of yourself. It's time to evolve. So if it hurts, let it. Let it burn. Let it unravel the stories you've held onto for too long. You're not being broken. You're being initiated. Initiated into the rawness of your real self, into the strength that can't be faked, into the clarity that only fire brings. Because after this, you won't settle for half versions of life. You won't wear the mask. You won't shrink to fit into places that no longer match your frequency. You've crossed a threshold, and there is no going back. So honor the pain. Respect it. It's not your enemy. It's your passage, your right, your calling to rise. And the next time someone asks you, why did it hurt so much? You'll answer, not with bitterness, but with power. Because I was being reborn. Chapter 9. Integration. Carrying the flame, not the fantasy. The real tragedy was never losing them. It was almost losing yourself in the aftermath of their absence. You see, when a connection cuts deep, so deep it touches the bones of your soul, it doesn't just vanish when they leave. The echo lingers. The flame flickers in your chest long after their physical presence is gone. But here's where most people get stuck. They carry the fantasy, not the flame. They hold on to the illusion that if they wait long enough, if they replay the memories, if they become someone better, that person might come back. That ending might rewrite itself. That heartbreak might turn into healing from the outside. But that's not integration. That's attachment to the dream. And the dream is not what your soul came here to live. The truth? They were never the destination. They were the bridge. They were the spark. Not the fire you were supposed to keep chasing. Not the fairy tale you were meant to keep rewriting. Real integration is when you stop waiting for their return and start walking into your own. When you stop carrying their memory like a wound and start carrying it like a torch, a flame that doesn't burn you anymore but guides you, because the most sacred thing they gave you was not their love. It was what their love revealed. They showed you where you were still aching. They exposed what you had forgotten about yourself. They awakened parts of your soul you buried to survive. And now that you've seen it, felt it, faced it, you must honor it. But not by shrinking back into longing. Not by living in the illusion that they were your ending. Because they weren't. They were the matchstick. That lit your inner fire. And now, you carry the flame. Not the fantasy. Not the hope they'll understand. Not the version of you that begged for closure. That part is gone. That part served its purpose. The new you walks differently, thinks deeper, chooses clarity over chaos, and purpose over pain. Because when you integrate, you no longer need the person to stay in order to keep what the experience gave you. You become the keeper of the truth. You become the home you were seeking in them. You become the flame that no one else can dim. And you don't do it for revenge. You don't do it to prove you've moved on. You do it because your soul is done surviving. Now it's time to live consciously. So when their name floats into your mind, you'll smile. Not because you want them back, but because now you finally have yourself. Chapter 10. The universe sends who you need. Stop replaying it in your mind like it was all a mistake. It wasn't. It was never random. It was never meaningless. It wasn't bad luck. It was divine architecture. Because the universe doesn't waste pain. It doesn't send people into your life without a reason. And when someone enters your life and breaks you open, that is not an accident. That is a message. You weren't cursed. You were chosen. Chosen to evolve, to awaken. And maybe they didn't stay. Maybe the ending hurt in ways words can't describe. Maybe you still lie awake wondering, what if? What could have been? But here's the shift your soul is ready to make. They weren't sent to stay. They were sent to disarm you, to pierce through your defenses, to soften the hard shell you built around your heart. They came to interrupt your autopilot, to break the dam of emotions you've buried, to force you to feel again, even if it meant falling apart, because sometimes you have to come undone to come home to yourself. Carl Jung said it perfectly. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. And that's what this was, an awakening. They didn't come to fulfill the fantasy, they came to dismantle it, because the love you were chasing in someone else's eyes was a mirror for the love you had yet to give yourself. You didn't lose love. You found yourself. You found the version of you that can sit with silence and still feel whole. The version that no longer begs to be understood, but finally understands themselves. The version that no longer builds a life around being chosen, but chooses themselves every single time. So stop asking why it had to happen this way. The universe doesn't explain its precision. It sends people like arrows to your soul, not to wound you, but to point you home. They were not your person. They were your permission. Permission to break the illusion. Permission to let go of what no longer serves. Permission to finally become the most authentic version of you. They were the soul contract that said, you must awaken now. So if you're still holding on to the question, why did it end? Shift it to, what began because of it? Because what began was the real story, the real you, the rediscovery of your voice, the cracking open of your truth. And one day you'll realize the universe never took something from you, it gave you back to yourself. So bless the pain, honor the fire, and carry the lesson forward, not as a scar, but as your initiation mark. Because now you know the universe sends exactly who you need, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And through that pain, you rise, not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to become. You're not alone. If this message touched something deep inside you, if it echoed in the silence you've been carrying, if it spoke to that invisible ache you never found the words for, that connection you still think about at 2 a.m., that moment you never really got to close, and then hear this. You were never broken. You were being rebuilt. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was your rebirth. This wasn't about losing them. It was about finding you. You were never meant to keep them. They were never your final chapter. They were the match that sparked the fire of your becoming. They came to remind you of everything you forgot, that you're worthy, that you're whole, that your love doesn't need to be earned, it needs to be remembered. So if you're ready to stop waiting for the past to return, ready to stop replaying the fantasy of what could have been, ready to stop searching for closure that was always meant to come from within, then do this not for me, but for you. Hit the like button as a silent promise to yourself. I'm choosing healing over holding on. Share this video with someone who's carrying the weight of an ending. Someone who needs to hear, you're not crazy for feeling this deeply. You're human, you're healing, and you're not alone. And in the comments below, tell us, what did they awaken in you? Because sometimes writing it down, giving it words, is the very first step in setting it free. This space isn't just for viewers. It's for souls in transition, for people like you who've been cracked open and are brave enough to turn that pain into purpose. So speak, type, let it out. There's power in your truth. And maybe, just maybe, your words will be the mirror someone else needs to begin their healing too. This isn't goodbye. This is the beginning of your return, back to yourself. Thank you for walking this path with us. Now go, carry the flame,